First of all, sorry to keep you all waiting. Sincere apologies. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kritika, and I welcome you all on behalf of BSE Social Stock Exchange. I would request everyone to kindly rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Kindly take your seats, please. It's a pleasure to be here today, to be as your host for an event that is going to be unforgettable for the rest of your life, an event that you all have been eagerly waiting for. I like to say that light and brightness has always been equated with positivity, and motivation is seen as the harbinger of good. To start us off on an auspicious note, I would like to request the following dignitaries to please head towards the lamp lighting for the lamp lighting ceremony without your shoes, please. Put your hands together for Naushir sir, Girish sir, Jaya ma'am, Ashok sir, Preeti ma'am, Gopi sir. A louder round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up next is Mr. Hemant Gupta, Head, BSE Social Stock Exchange and MD Zone Startups India. Presentation, Hemant sir anta. Laptop male shift. त्याच्यात आहे का? I'd now like to call upon stage Mr. Hemant Gupta. He is a BTech from IIT Madras and MBA IIM Calcutta with over 26 years of experience in global financial markets. He's also been instrumental in setting up the BSE Samman for enabling Indian CSR ecosystem.
Thank you, Kritika, and thank you everybody for coming down, especially the NGOs that have already registered on the Social Stock Exchange. I thought I'll do a quick recap of what the Social Stock Exchange is all about, especially for the benefit of people in the audience who may not be aware of the construct behind the Social Stock Exchange. But before that, for people who have come to BSE, especially this hall for the first time, you're actually sitting in the place where the trading used to happen before things went electronic and all the electrons took over. So if you look around you, it's been refurbished since then. It looks much better now. But if you look around you, there are these brown pillars which have letters on them, right? Those were pillars where all companies starting with that letter would get traded. Right? And used to be the old cry system where people would be walking around with chits of paper, bid and asks, right? And whenever I'm here, there's a sense of dignity. There's a sense of history that I feel. Okay, so can we? Sure. So just a quick recap of history. 2019 is when the Social Stock Exchange was announced in a speech, budget speech by the Honorable Finance Minister. It was followed by a couple of working groups that were created to actually convert that vision into implementable policies and procedures. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the pre-consultation that SEBI did, and then the two working groups. And now I'm looking after the Social Stock Exchange at BSE. We had also invited officials from SEBI for this function. Unfortunately, a recent report by a global investor with a name starting with H seems to have ruffled a few feathers, and they called up earlier today to say that they will not be able to join. So apologies from their side to everybody here. So while the slides come up, I can walk you through the process. So what essentially happened was that a working group got created under the chairmanship of Mr. Ishaq Hussain, and it had members from all parts of the social development ecosystem. And broadly, that working group recommended three things. One is they recommended that the Social Stock Exchange will be a part of the stock exchange. So there's no separate entity called Social Stock Exchange. Thereby, what that did effectively was that automatically the Social Stock Exchange inherits all the governance, the procedures, the listing processes, everything that goes along with being on a stock exchange. The second is that they recommended that a capacity building fund be set up. The purpose of the capacity building fund was to help not-for-profit organizations who are unfamiliar with the financial the stock capital markets, the stock exchange ecosystem, help them get greater awareness and provide them with the ability, the capacity to actually come onto the stock exchange. Equally importantly, the capacity building fund is also intended for investors or donors who wish to participate by giving money to projects and organizations that are coming onto the Social Stock Exchange. So the capacity building fund, which has now been constituted as a fund under NABARD, the intent is, once they start rolling out, the intent would be to work with investors as well as with the NGOs and enable them to come onto the Social Stock Exchange. The third thing that they recommended, the working committee, was a zero coupon, zero principal instrument. And we have to be careful that we don't use the word bond with zero coupon, zero principal, because bond traditionally is associated with financial instruments that gives you a return. A zero coupon, zero principal instrument by definition gives you zero financial return, and your principal also is not returned to you, thereby it being nothing else but a donation or a grant by another name. What you get is a social return, right? So broadly, those were the three principles that the working group laid out. That was shortly thereafter followed by a technical group, which had a much wider participation under the chairmanship of Mr. Bhanwala, who used to be the managing director of NABARD. And that actually took the workings of the working group and translated that into operating procedures, policies, etc., around which the social stock exchange is actually created. Right? And some of those operating principles, as an example, is any organization coming onto the social stock exchange has to first prove that it's oh, we're up. Okay, we've gone through the history part. These were the two working committees and the technical groups. Right? And then, of course, in July, starting with July last year, SEBI, Ministry of Finance, came out with a series of notifications and regulations that actually created the environment for a stock exchange to exist. Right? Some stuff on why a social stock exchange is important, and I talked about this briefly in the roundtable we had earlier. Essentially, the idea is from an issuer, which is a person who's raising money, organization raising money, is that it creates a platform where you get national visibility. Remember, the stock exchange actually has investors in every nook and cranny of this country. It allows you to exhibit the impactful work that you're doing from one portal, from one platform, and it allows you to connect to additional pools of investors. And this point I make in every forum that I talk on. The social stock exchange, to my mind, is not just a replacement for the existing CSR donations and the other donations that you guys are raising. It actually provides you with a platform through which you can access other investors, high net worth individuals, foundations, etc., which today you may not be tapping into. And all of this at a minimal cost. For investors or donors, it provides a platform that allows them then in turn to access credible organizations across the country. Right? Today, as an individual, I probably know what's happening in and around the area where I work or where I live or where I have friends, but through the stock exchange, you actually get access to organizations across the country doing credible work. You get transparency into what's happening with your funds because of the regular reporting, which is a mandate. And also important here is that the transparency actually comes with an additional benefit of being certified by a third party through the social audit mechanism. Okay. Okay. Right. So very quickly, the first thing you have to do if you have to come onto the social stock exchange, and some of you, 7 of you to be precise, have already undergone this journey, is to prove that you're a social enterprise. How do you prove that you're a social enterprise? You do that through establishing a primacy of social intent, which involves a 3-stage filter. The first is you should be working on one or more of 15 areas which are derived broadly from the CSR, Schedule 7 of the CSR Act and SDG goals. 2/3 of your work, whether measured through revenue, expenses, or beneficiaries, has to be in one or more of these areas. Also, at least initially, a set of organizations were kept out of the purview of the social stock exchange, those with political or religious affiliations, corporate foundations, which already have a dedicated source of fund, professional trade bodies, and infrastructure and housing companies, except those in affordable housing. Right? Let's go back to that. All right, so you established your primacy of social intent. Then, if you're a for-profit enterprise, there's already in existence the stock exchange system through the SME exchange, the startup platform, and the main board. Depending on your size, your capabilities, you go directly and list and raise funds. If you're a not-for-profit, then you get registered on the stock exchange, first step, and then you can raise funds. Okay. idea behind separating the registration process and the listing process for not-for-profits was keeping in mind that a majority of not-for-profits normally raise funds at a project level, right? And therefore, you don't need to every time submit all documentation, undergo all the due diligence. You do it one time and then you can raise funding multiple times. Having said that, there has been a lot of discussion around what do we do if we want to raise money for corpus or for the organization, for a not-for-profit, and that also can actually be achieved through the same mechanism. I don't think there's any difference. And the ways you can raise money for a not-for-profit is either through a zero coupon, zero principle. Remember we spoke about the new name for the donation or the grant, or more interestingly through collaborative or syndicated financial instruments like a social venture fund or a social impact fund, where either yourself or organizations working towards a common purpose can actually come together and raise funds for a common project. On the for-profit side, of course, you have do an IPO, do an equity listing, raise funds through the debt route or mutual funds or social venture funds. The one additional instrument is the social development bond, which to me is actually a very exciting new way of fundraising, which provides which brings in financial investors into the social development ecosystem, which traditionally has been dominated by philanthropists. It brings risk investors, as they call, also into the fold, and we can have a separate session around social development bonds for those who are interested. Right. So these are the 15 areas. There's a 16th one which says that the list above can be amended in future. Right. So now that you've crossed the primacy of social intent criteria, your registration eligibility is broadly based on the Section 135, Society Trust to Section 8, track record of 3 years, have a valid 12A 1023C, and we've also added 1046 because some entities actually had 1046 registration. Have a valid ATG registration, which probably will go away, and then must have a minimum size requirement, because being on a stock exchange, there are additional compliance and disclosure requirements. So therefore, there's a minimum size that you should be able to absorb that additional work that you have to do. One other comment on this slide, actually this slide is from before the last advisory committee meeting that we had. So these figures are no longer the average of last 3 years, they're actually for the last year. How do you register yourself? You come to our portal, bsesocialstockexchange.com. You indicate that you're interested. One of the team members from the BSE team will come back to you and with a list of documents you're supposed to submit. And it normally, based on the experience of the 7 NGOs that are there, this process takes anything from about 8 days to about 3 weeks. And it's mostly dependent on how good your relationship is with your auditor, because some of the documents that you need to submit have to be certified. Yeah. Then, of course, if you want to raise funds, there's a process that you have to go through, which includes writing an offer document, or in the stock exchange parlance, a draft red herring prospectus. But we are calling it an offer document. It's similar to a proposal that you would write for any donor, outlining duration, impact, budgets, fund flows, etc. Right? Including outcomes, because remember, the work you're doing for funds raised on the social stock exchange is subject to a third-party audit. So you have to have clearly defined indicators to which the auditor will then hold you accountable. Right, some more characteristics of the ZCZP: minimum issue size of 1 crore, subscription amount 2 lakhs, can only be in a demat form. As you know, stock exchanges, anything that's listed on the stock exchange is now in demat form, and a minimum issue subscription required is 75%. And of course, the zero coupon, zero principle will terminate when the objectives of the project have been achieved. This is one slide on which I get a lot of questions in the seminars and webinars I do. What are the additional disclosure requirements? My suggestion would be that we have a more detailed discussion on this for those of you who are interested. But broadly, there's a set of stuff that you're supposed to submit when you're registering. And then on an ongoing basis, the two important things are, one is event-based. Any event that has a material impact on the organization needs to be disclosed within 7 days. And then an annual impact report covering strategic intent, planning, approach, etc. needs to be submitted within 90 days of the financial year end. For an FPE or a for-profit enterprise, the applicable rules of the stock exchange, depending on the segment you're in, will be. Okay, a brief slide on social auditors. So, there are 13 countries in which the social stock exchange was set up, with most of them not surviving or being only directories of entities or focusing only on for-profit enterprises. India is one of the first countries to actually experiment with doing this for not-for-profit enterprises from a stock exchange perspective. And some of the things that the working committee felt will be needed were, for example, a construct like a social auditor, which is a third party validating the outcomes that your project is creating, thereby giving transparency into the work that is happening with the funds that an investor is putting in. Right, so there is, again, broadly, there is a certification process to become a social auditor that's been rolled out by NISM. There are 11 modules that you have to take, and at the end you have to give an exam, and that certifies you. There is a separate system, SRO that's been created under ICI called Indian Social Auditors Institute, and there are standards that have been defined for each of those 15 areas, again by Chartered Accountant Institute for these standards. More details you can get at either the Indian Social Auditor Institute website or at NISM. Right, so that's broadly what we had. Can we get Krutika back? Thank you. Sorry, any questions on any of the stuff that we spoke about, or any questions in general about the social stock exchange?
Sir, thank you. Sir, if you can also explain, because now the NGOs are registered and those registered NGOs are also present over here. So if you can explain now if they want to go for listing, so what will be in brief the process and how much time it will take and the benefits. So that will be useful.
Sure. So briefly, you can list, you can raise fundraise. So terminology wise, what you guys, 7 of you have done is registration, and there are 3 more in the pipeline, almost there. Listing is when you actually do fundraising. You can do fundraising through 2 means as a not-for-profit, either a zero coupon, zero principal, for which we will shortly be coming out with an offer template, which you fill in for the project for which you want to raise funds. You write to us. That offer template or offer document will be put up on our website for 21 days for public comment. And if all the documentation, all the all the clearances are given, then you can get into fundraising. One thing that I would recommend for anybody who's wanting to do fundraising through the zero coupon, zero principal route is, remember, on a stock exchange, and some of you who invest in IPOs will be familiar with this, typically a fundraising, an IPO is open for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, right? It's not open for, your fundraisers actually can take months sometime to raise funds for a particular project. So my recommendation one is that try and get most of your donors or investors lined up before you come for the fundraise. Right? So and then once we open that window for, I think, Prithiben, currently it's about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, right? Yeah. There's still debate going on as to how long we can keep the window open, because it's not something that is in the stock exchange's control. There are associated impact of keeping that window open. As an example, if you invest into a share, into an IPO, your money doesn't go out of your account immediately, right? There is something called ASBA that you have to sign up for, which means that the money stays with you, but it's locked, right? You can't use it for any other purposes. Now, all of those mechanisms can be implemented only for a fixed amount of time. They can't be implemented for months, right? And there are other ancillary processes that kick in, because of which we can't keep it open for as long as we would like to. So therefore, my recommendation is that you get your investors, get your donors lined up before you come to the stock exchange for fundraise. The second thing is that, like I said, in your offer document, try and be as clear as you can in terms of your objectives, your budgets, and your outcomes, because your auditor, the financial auditor and the social auditor, will hold you accountable for these things. Okay. So that's as far as the zero coupon, zero principle goes. The social impact fund or social venture fund mechanism, that SEBI is still to come out with the final regulations on that, and so the more to come follow on that. Anything else you want me to add? That's minimum size, yeah, 1 crore. We spoke about that, minimum size of 1 crore, and DMAT form, minimum subscription of 2 lakhs, right? I see a couple of hands raised. Yes, madam.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Rita Savla from Radhi Foundation. Currently, the only people can register, NGOs can register, who has a minimum 50 lakhs of the revenue and 10 lakhs raised in that particular financial year. But there are many NGOs like us who have been actually working pan-India, has a good impact, but then it does not show in books of account. And we actually, just last month I did some printing of approximately 86,000, and I told my donor, ये printer है, उसको पैसा भेज दो. And because it is not showing in my banks of account, but the impact of work, what we are doing, it has been across pan-India, and most of the people know what work we are doing it. So, and then it makes me totally ineligible to be a part of this. I specifically came for this program because we are talking with the government and we are having the financial issue, and this thing which was been last told me to 2 weeks back by the health secretary, why don't you go and attend and explore it, because we are looking forward fund for the trauma management and where there are gaps and we are not able to move further, and this could be the one of the good platform to raise the fund. So how we do go for that? Because even that registration will also help us to be the visibility. Listing is a different thing.
Right, so 2 answers to a question. Actually 3 answers, the more I think about it. First is, remember this is the first version of the social stock exchange. And to an extent the regulators and the government are being conservative in terms of who's coming onto the platform. And therefore there is a minimum size criteria, size in this case being a proxy for impact getting created. Not a very good proxy, but that's what they've decided. So that's one answer to your question. The second is what I had mentioned earlier, which is that there will be a certain cost associated with coming on to the stock exchange, right? A one-time cost of getting registered, and then an ongoing compliance cost of those disclosures that we spoke about. And I think the intent behind that limit was also to ensure that organizations who can absorb that cost, at least initially, those are the ones that come forward onto the social stock exchange. The third, which is not, I mean, the third reason is that even if you look at the corporate ecosystem, right, how many companies are there on the stock exchange? If you combine the main board, the Sesame Exchange, and the startup segment, and if you combine BSE and NSE, you probably have 7,500, 8,000 companies, right? How many companies are there, including the SMEs in the country? It's lakhs and lakhs, right? So coming to the stock exchange to an extent is also a mark of you're having reached a certain level of maturity, a certain level of organizational capability, right? And again, once again, historically, size has been used as a proxy for that, right? Financial size has been used as. So those are 3 reasons. If you, hopefully in the next 6 months to 1 year, you'll be large enough to come onto the social stock exchange.
We by default where, who will put up, because and then again there are compliances which say you cannot do the market branding and all that, and donors want branding. So they said it will go into the marketing fund if it is not been given as an aid, we cannot do the thing.
Why don't we take this?
Many things which is actually making us to we want to be very transparent what work we are doing it. So the books of account are not showing much. So if you can rethink about it and we could have some different approach for the NGOs are doing a good work which has a better impact also, but they have not such a good book of accounts.
We can discuss that, certainly.
Thank you.
There was a gentleman here who had a question. I think he raised his hands first.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So my question was, now that it has already been discussed about the small regulatory burden that is going to be there. Just wanted to understand from the donor's point of view, if there is tax exemptions on this.
So the 3 things that I should mention, thank you for reminding me. One is that this SSE 1.0 that we are talking about right now, there's no CSR funds allowed. So a donor cannot be a CSR donor. As of now, ATG is not given for funds on the platform, and FCRA is not allowed. Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, Hemant. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gayatri Balan from Ambuja Cement Foundation. So thank you, Hemant and Kritika, for the first initial discussions we had. See, I had a follow-up question to the point on the window that you're going to keep open. See, initially you had said that, CSR funding cannot be routed through the SSE, and we're going to tap into investors who we have not been able to reach out to traditionally, right? So how would the idea of lining up donors work? I just wanted to know, because if we want to reach out to people who we've not reached out to, traditionally, then how do we line them up for, say, a 2-week window or a 3-week window? How would that work, if you could just...
Okay. I actually don't know how to answer. It's a good question, and I don't know how to answer it accurately, but 2 things I would say. One is that the stock exchange itself does not help in fundraising. It's supposed to be a neutral platform. So even if you look at a corporate coming to do an IPO, they usually employ people like merchant bankers to help them raise funds. The stock exchange will never do that for you. Second is that, however, there is the capacity building fund, and there is the, and we are also from our side, because given that we want the social stock exchange to take off, we are also actually doing webinars and seminars focused on investors and donors who are not CSR, not FCRA, right? There are quite a lot of them, by the way. So, I mean, we can talk about that offline. Yeah? Yes, madam. Pratmesh?
So the question that I have, that government compliances ensure that we don't raise a single money that we are not able to spend that financial year. So for some reason, I made an offer for 1 CR after getting listed, and another private individual comes and tells me, here is 1 CR, but I don't want to go through the exchange. I'm just giving you donation. Can I take it, or I won't be able to take it just because I have listed?
May I ask you to answer that one, Noshir bhai?
It's hard to answer.
Sure. We'll come back to you. Okay. I don't know. I have the answer to that. I'm sorry, but we'll probably last one. We started late.
Hi sir, good afternoon.
Hi.
My name is Parth Shukla. I come from Krishna Foundation. We work in diverse areas related to financial literacy, investor awareness, cybercrime, etc. I have 3 questions. I just need some insight on the whole mechanism of fundraising and getting listed. Second would be, how much time does it take for an NGO to get registered or listed at the SSE? Third would be, can a donor or a funder it is required to be a company or a retailer can do as well? So these three things.
Okay, what is the first one?
The whole mechanism of fundraising and getting listed,
Okay.
and the time duration.
So like I said, the stock exchange doesn't get into fundraising. I mean, you'll have to do it by yourself. So it depends on how long you'll take to raise the funds. The second was the time duration for the registration process. 8 days to 3 weeks is our track record so far, depending on your relationship with your chartered accountant. And the third question was, what was the third question?
Can the donor or funder be a retailer?
Oh yeah. So it can be anybody.
All right.
It can be, so there are two things that you have to be careful about if you're a donor. One is you can't bring in FCRA funds and CSR funds, and the second is the minimum amount of subscription is 2 lakhs. Otherwise, you can be anybody.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure. So with that, we'll have to end this session. I'd like to move forward with the main part of this event, which is the felicitation of the startups, NGOs that have registered on the Social Stock Exchange. I'll call Kritika back. Kritika?
Thank you, sir. We will now move forward to the bell ringing ceremony. I guess most of the NGOs are waiting for. I'd like to call upon stage Girish sir to give away the certificates. The first coming up on stage is Opportunity Trust Foundation. They provide opportunities of growth to disadvantaged children and youth through access to education and training. They live the truth when they say ability is nothing without opportunity. Can we clap, please? I'd like to call upon Naushir sir. Coming up next is Vatsalya Society. Vatsalya is a Sanskrit word meaning unconditional motherly love. Vatsalya has undertaken project in and around Jaipur. They have a unique children's village on the outskirts of Jaipur where they have nurtured approximately 560 students from the year 2002. Can I have Preeti ma'am on stage, please? The next is the Missing Link Trust. Missing is India's leading organization working to prevent sex trafficking by raising awareness through education, art, and technology. Their vision is a world where every child is safe from sex trafficking. Can I have Gopi sir on stage? Coming up next is ISDM. It is the world's first management school of the social sector set up to create an entire ecosystem and professional management backbone, especially for the development sector. Can I again have Girish sir on stage, please? Girish sir. Stage. Next is Lighthouse Communities Foundation. Established in 2011, Lighthouse Community Foundation is on a mission to build empowered communities through life skills, employment and entrepreneurship opportunities for 1 million disadvantaged youth across India. Clap. Next is SGBS Unnati Foundation. Unnati enables inclusive growth by empowering families below poverty line. It was founded by a singular aim to harness the potential of every youth of the country and mold him or her to become self-reliant. Last but not the least, United Way Mumbai. It's an organization working in urban and rural communities across India to identify and impact the most impactful solutions to community problems. By the time, can I have all the NGOs who've received the certificate for a group picture, please?
I guess.
Ashok sir.
Prathamesh, Tushar. Huh? नीचे बैठ
हो जाएगा
This is okay. If it's not, if you're fitting in this one, then it's
I'd now like to invite upon stage Girish Joshi sir for the vote of thanks.
I think very good moment we have, wonderful occasions, and the journey has started. And on behalf of BSE, we thank all of you, and all congratulations to all 7 NGO registered and more in the pipeline. And I think what you got from the presentation of Hemant, that yes, it is possible, and the way government and SEBI has supported this platform, it will be, I think, eye-opener for many things, and it will give a lot of opportunities to all of us in this beautiful attempt made by the government. And once again, I thank all of you. You made your work out from your busy schedule and come here and to join this celebration. So thank you very much all.
Thank you, sir. It's been such an honor to be a part of this wonderful event. On behalf of BSE Social Stock Exchange, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our esteemed guests, listed NGOs. Sincere thanks to BSE, listing operations and listing compliance team, who have handled the NGOs during their onboarding journey. Finally, I would like to thank all of you present here for making time and helping us today for making this a grand success. Thank you, one and all. We have some refreshments for you all in that Norton Hall. Yes.